Hello guys. Today I would like to make a presentation on the Mulcharmy meta and how you can play it. But before we go into how to play it, what is a Mulcharmy? Mulcharmies are monsters of an archetype that currently persists of 3 monsters. They all have a very similar effect that allows you to discard them as a quick effect for the rest of the turn after this effect was used, draw 1 card per summon that your opponent does from a specific place. You can use up to two Molcharmies per turn. You can only use them if you control no cards. This usually causes you not be able to use this while you have a persisting board, be it spells and traps or monsters, or even a field spell. And lastly, they also have a condition that requires you to shuffle back cards randomly from your hand until you have maximum 6 cards more than your opponent currently controls on the field. So, which Molcharmies do exist? Currently, we have 3, as said. The first one that was released in Infinite Forbidden is Molcharmy Perulia, which allows you to draw 1 card when your opponent summons monsters from their hand. The second one, and the most famous one, is Mulcharmy Fuvala, released in Rage of the Abyss. It allows you to draw 1 card when your opponent summons from their deck or their extra deck. And the final one that we got in Suda is Mulcharmy Meowls, which allows you to draw 1 card when your opponent summons from their graveyard or their banishment. Why do people dislike Mulcharmies are very similar to a certain card that is banned in the TCG called Maxx C. Maxx C is a card that allows you to draw 1 card every time your opponent special summons a monster. And it's currently legal in both Master Duel as well as the OCG, albeit in a semi-limited or limited fashion. Um, the TCG, it has been ever banned since Spiral format, and it is commonly considered an, among the top 5 best Yu-Gi-Oh cards ever printed to its oppressive nature. However, compared to Maxx C, these cards are, as said, a little bit more balanced. The Molcharmies have a couple exploitable weaknesses that you can to design your turn to play around or into them. First of all, the same as Maxx C, it is you that decides how many draws your opponent gets. So if you have a hand that does not want to give your opponent too many draws, you don't have to. Also, the Mulcharmies are not usable while your opponent controls a board, as said, which makes it an effectively dead card in their hand that they can draw off of draw effects, etc., etc. Also, Mulcharmies, the more you play, the more deck space they use. And this deck space can become an issue if you want to insert other non-engines. So they come with an opportunity cost. But despite this, Mulcharmies have been extremely popular in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TC. This is just a sample list that I have taken from one of the latest regionals. This is a Mitsurugi Ryziel build, and as you see, despite these cards only being effective while going second, this deck plays 6 copies of them in the main deck and 3 of them in the extra deck. This just is a testament of how respected these cards are in the current. But despite being that powerful, as said, they have weaknesses that can be exploited. And also, you have different lines of counterplay that you can do against Molcharmies. So the first way how you can counter them is the most obvious. You could just negate the Molcharmy. There are cards like Cross Out Designator or Called by the Grave that are dedicated towards removing hand traps, but also other cards that usually are not thought of as outs for non-engine, such as Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, can be effective at negating Mulcharmy. And this is one of the most common uses and the most common reasons that you're currently seeing Ash Blossom, despite power creep making decks pretty much not care about a singular Ash Blossom. Also, some decks that do not care so much around that restriction can use Droll and Lockbird to restrict Mulcharmy's draws to a minimum by using it after your opponent draws a card off of the Mulcharmy. And decks like Malice or Life Twin can be able to do this. However, negating them is not as effective if your opponent opens multiple. So if your opponent activates two Mulcharmies, you better have two separate ways of negating them. Otherwise, you will have to accept that you have to use the next options. The second option might sound the most uh, the least preferable, which is passing your turn. Uh, Mulcharmies are inherently a -1 in card advantage if they are used preemptively, or are a net neutral if they are chained to an effect that would summon from that certain zone. So you can technically say, if you look at your hand and see that your hand already has a lot of disruption, that you can just pass your turn to a Molcharmy that was preemptively thrown, such as Molcharmy Perulia is often done. But some Molcharmies, such as Fuvalos or especially Molcharmy Meows, are cards that are often thrown in response to a card, so they always replace themselves. But still, it can be an option to just pass turn instantly. As said, if you have non-engine that can protect you back, or if you have your own mold armies that you want to resolve, and usually even a combination of both. It is risky, but sometimes it will save you again. The more preferable way to do it is to make a half board. Sometimes your deck has options that let you produce interruptions at the same or a better rate that your opponent is currently drawing cards. So one example would be, for example, Malice summoning Red Ransom to search Malice in the Mirror, which usually produces two interruptions, one via Malice in the Mirror negating a card, and the second one via MTP07 banishing one card your opponent controls without targeting, and also providing follow-up in terms of searching a Malice card. Or the deck that I am playing, which is White Forest, which likes to set up both Diabell's monsters are confronted with a Mulcharmy Fuva loss. Backed with your own non-engine, such half-boards can often win you the game and are probably the most preferred method of dealing with Mulcharmy. But this requires pre-planning and knowledge of your deck. For example, if I am confronted with a Mulcharmy Fuva loss, but I am not directly able to search my Diabella engine in my White Forest deck, I might also just opt to summon Juraishin, the Cursed Thunder God, instead, and then set cards that are interruptions, such as Black Goat Laughs or Forbidden Droplet. Or hand trap decks, such as Malice or Life Twin, can just pass their turn on IP Mana, or in Malice's case, Heart's Cryptor or Red Ransom, and then use the rest of their interactable hand traps to protect that half board and reach a turn 3 where they will not be able to pull Charming. As said, you need to know what your deck does, and you need to pre-plan for those. The next option is one that I should not prefer unless you are absolutely confident in it. It is accepting the challenge. Accepting the Mulcharmy challenge means you're completely ignoring them and playing as if they have not resolved and letting your opponent draw the card. Engines only have a limited amount of pushes. Specifically, weak engines can be stopped by just a few interruptions if they are sequenced correctly and you have the correct knowledge of how to use them against that deck. Also, your non-engine can end a game in addition to your board. So that is another thing that you have to know. Um, Decks such as Life Twin are often full combo through, just so you can have enough interruptions to stop them from playing and then reach your turn 3, where you can OTK back. The special version of doing this, accepting the Mulcharmy challenge, is if your deck is really, really unfair, as in an FTK. Decks like Six Samurai or Gimmick Puppets are very notable examples for decks that would prefer to combo through the Mulcharmy in order to let your opponent not reach their own turn and just ending the game turn 1. So FTKing is always an option, and similar as Maxx C, you can also summon an infinite amount of times to let your opponent draw their deck out, because Mulcharmy Perulia will allow you to do that, for example, in Six Samurai. However, accepting the challenge always comes with the risk that your opponent draws a blowout, payout, or a combination of hand traps that can stop your shenanigans place while still having access to engine due to the immense amount of card advantage they are accumulating. Option number 4 is floodgating them back. Certain cards or conditions can be utilized as long as you set up their precondition to paralyze your opponent or to minimize the card advantage that they have achieved off of the Mulcharmy. The most notable option right now is Harpy's Featherstorm, which is played by decks that have access to a Wind-Winged Beast in order to completely stun a deck out of their monster effects. Also, a solution that I have personally been using in the past was Deck Devastation Virus to nuke out all of their monsters that have less than 1500 attack, uh, just so that you can make sure that they have very minimal plays. So you're doing maximum card rip. Another recently very popular choice is Heavy Slump, which makes your opponent discard their cards until they have a certain amount if they have drawn over a certain threshold. Also, cards that are generally good, such as Artifact Lancia or Drone Lockbird, can be an option. The final option that I would like to present is one of the most ambitious one, and this is more gambling or more mind games than it actually is strategy, pre-planned strategy. If you're facing a deck that likes to side 6+ Mulcharmies, such as in this meta, Pure Mitsurugi, can decide to side your own Mulcharmies and then let them go first while they have Mulcharmies in their deck, simply because it is often expected that that the losing player is going to go first after siding. If you then proceed to go second, your opponent might have sided too many Mulcharmies and therefore might have weakened their actual deck and and in result, allowing you to proceed to OTK. I have been doing this very successfully against Pure Mitsurugi, and it is always fun to let them go first and them normal summoning a Charmy and doing whatever they can to establish a half board while they side out certain cards that would make their stronger, such as Grand Purification, in order to side in their Mulcharmies, which are, of course, dead if they're going first. So then you can just end the game. And even if they pass on a empty board, you have the threat of pushing for game. This only works against decks that you know that they make an end board that you can reliably beat, especially with just engine. Or if you have non-engine that is specifically effective against their deck. All in all, I think Mulcharmies were a really, really good addition towards the video game, and have helped a lot with the issues of hand trap decks being very powerful options going first, um, and also weakening those going first decks by encouraging them to play these Mulcharmies, which are inherently not good at going first, but only good at going second. And if they become more frequently reprinted and more accessible to a general player base, it might actually help the health of the game a lot. Anyways, I thank you for listening to the small presentation, and I hope you guys learned on how to deal with Mulcharmies. See ya.